natural food brands, and by that, I'm sure you're all trying to make the earth a better place, in addition to making money. And the two can sometimes feel at odds. Do you use an organic ingredient but lower your margin? Do you seek non-GMO certification knowing you'll have to pay for it every year? You make these choices every single day. But picture what it's like to make those choices when you have not 10 products, but hundreds of them. In this situation, I'm sure some companies would do what's just best for their bottom line. But Unilever says it's trying something different. They've realized that focusing on sustainability is the way to stoke profits and grow a portfolio that has staying power. Matthew McCarthy, the VP of Foods for Unilever North America, is overseeing this focus for brands ranging from Hellmann's to Ben & Jerry's. And he's here to share the lessons Unilever has learned from this process and discuss how you can apply them to your own brands. Matthew?
Is everybody ready for a 4-hour boring presentation about corporate America? No. All right, good. Neither am I. Okay, so let's dive in here. I don't know how we're going to do Q&A, probably at the end, but if someone can't control themselves, they just have to speak up, then go ahead and do it, and I'll try to talk around these pillars here. My name is Matthew McCarthy, and I have the honor of being with you today, and I appreciate you inviting me and having me to be part of your day. I head up our foods business for Unilever North America. I've actually been with Unilever for about a little over 20 years. I never thought I'd do anything for 20 years, but in honesty, I feel like I've been with 4 or 5 different companies over that time. I started with Best Foods Baking Company and the direct store delivery baking business, and then from there we got bought and sold and bought and upscaled and downscaled and all that stuff. And I think the main reason why I'm still at Unilever, and it's probably not intelligence, but I'm still at Unilever because the gap between say and do has gotten narrower over time. In any organization, there's a gap between say and do. There's your ambition and what are you actually doing to get to it. And what I have found, particularly over the past 7 or 8 years since we introduced the Unilever Sustainable Living program globally to drive sustainability through our brands, I saw a precipitous narrowing of the gap between say and do, particularly the people north of me in the organization that sometimes are enablers and sometimes are blockers, and that's the same for any organization. So I said, well, let me stay around a little bit longer. Let me stay a little bit longer. And things continue to get better, and that's been the case, and it's actually increased in the past few years. I actually started my career working for my dad in a small printing company in Massachusetts. So while I was still in high school and then in college, I was working my summers and my winters and my breaks learning how to run a small business with my dad, who left big business. And then I went and joined a big business. And so I've tried to not lose that focus on the power of small businesses and the founder's mindset to transform any business. And that's never been more true in Unilever right now. Certainly there's a lot of barriers and some challenges, and I'll talk through that a little bit. But the thread through what I want to talk to you about today is around scaling sustainability, having an impact at scale. And that's also one of the reasons why I've chosen to stay at Unilever, is because while there's a lot of challenges being in a big company, when you get it right, you can actually drive lots of change up and down the value chain with your business and have a real impact. That's never been more needed than right now. The other thing I would say is that every aspect of the business world that I'm part of is messier than ever. I mean, it is a mess. All the stuff that I learned when I was early in my product management and brand management skill set days seems to be coming apart at the seams, and I actually really like that. It's unnerving to some people, but I actually really, really like it. So whether it's the way that we communicate and create dialogue with the people that we serve, the communities that we work within, employees, certainly the retail environment. I mean, what a mess. It is a complete mess, and I love it. It's a very messy time with our retail partners, and they need our help more than ever in ways in finding growth. And as well policy and the space around what is nutrition. And so running the foods business for Unilever, nutrition, claims, sustainability, all these things are super important to what we're doing. And I think that The other thing I'd call out that I've observed is that we are all way more interested in foods than at any point I've seen in the 20 years I've been doing CPG. We, when I say P, I don't mean consumers, I mean we, us, our family, our friends, the people that we serve. Everybody's more interested in foods than ever. I've got these stats. I was at our national sales meeting last week. I was with about 500 people in Florida, and I like to put up a few charts that say that, the number one thing people are posting isn't kittens and it isn't weddings, it's about food. And the merging together of food and culture, food and experience, food and wellness, and entertainment is generating more excitement in the food industry than I've ever seen. And I've spent about 14 years of my 20 or so years at Unilever in the foods business. And that excitement is also offset by a tremendous amount of distrust, a lot of distrust. And in fact, for those of you that may follow different external benchmarks of trust, one of the ones that we use is Edelman's Trust Barometer that they've been doing for 18 years. Trust was crappy, was getting crappier, and in 17 got the crappiest it's been ever since they've been tracking it. So all of our trust and sources of information has gone through the floor as well. So I think this is kind of interesting time where you've got people more interested in food than ever, but also a bit of lack of trust around the business. Unilever, I won't bore you to death with the business, but I do want to hit on it a little bit. Unilever is about a 60 billion euro company, or one of the largest CPGs in the world, and these are some of the brands that are on here. It's our job. My day job is actually taking the brands that I work on and finding ways to scale sustainability. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit more depth. But our people around the world, our products are used by 2.5 billion people every single day. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because that's a sense of responsibility. So if you're running a business that there's that many people buying you off of a shelf, opening your package, making a meal with your product, and then having to figure out what to do with the leftovers and hopefully not throwing them away, and then the packaging. All of those 2.5 billion interactions every day is an opportunity that we have to take responsibility for, as well as the upstream work that it took to get there, all the supply chain stuff, and then downscale, all the things that aren't really in our control as marketeers for these brands, but yet we have to take responsibility. For example, on our personal care business, we have a very large personal wash business. How much water are people actually using in our showers? Can we reformulate our products to actually help reduce the amount of water that people are using on our products? So making sustainable living commonplace is my day job, and the reason that's the case is that the data's super clear. And every time we've done a study, and we've been doing them for the past few years now, it's very clear that our brands that have made purpose and sustainability the centerpiece of what they do are growing at 50% faster than our brands that haven't quite gotten it together yet. And in 2017, 70% of all of Unilever's growth globally came from what we call our sustainable living brands. The brands that have it together, they have a plan, they have a very specific, cogent, quantified approach to driving purpose in and through their brands and through the supply networks for the people that they serve. So the data is super clear. So if you want to be in marketing and you want to grow business, the messiness of our business and the industry is meaning that we have to upskill all the time. And if you believe the data, you can't conclude otherwise that building sustainability into your business and making it commonplace is what you're supposed to be doing every day. And scaling sustainability is really important, because I think that when we talk about some of our businesses, some of the brands that I'm responsible for, like Hellmann's mayonnaise, Americans eat a lot of mayonnaise, and a lot of mayonnaise is consumed around the world. We have about 450 million consumers. Another brand that I'm responsible for is Knorr. Knorr soups, sauces, bouillons, things, side dishes. And this is actually Unilever's second largest brand on the planet behind Dove. It's about 4.5 billion euros in size, and it's used by 320 million people every day. So these are brands that have big, big scale. And again, I say that not to brag. I say that because the thing that freaks me out, and it's got me kind of constructively paranoid every day, is how am I supporting my team to help drive the changes that we need to have an impact on the business. The other thing I'd say is that big food I think is about big impact. You know, I think it's fair that lots of people criticize big companies or big anythings. And in the food business, I do think it's fair that a lot of big food players open themselves up to criticism, hopefully constructive criticism of what are they doing. But the fact of the matter is that if big companies don't do stuff, it's going to be a long, long way to get there. And so it's an honor for me to be able to speak to a group of people who are founders and entrepreneurs and people who are changing the world, because I am part of a big company, and we do have a lot of small businesses within, but the bar that you're setting is one that my team and I spend a lot of time looking at. Because at the end of the day, sometimes we're focused on the big machines, so to speak, and it can be hard to get out of our way. And so we're looking externally to those people who are driving change. And then how do we bring that into our business? So in a couple minutes, I'm going to touch on a few case examples, hopefully to make this real, and some specific things that we've done. Some are on the big side, but some are on the small side. So if you look at some of the acquisitions that Unilever has made over the past few years, some are large, but a lot of them are smaller. And our approach to those acquisitions is pretty straightforward. How do we basically have what those businesses and those teams and those leaders are doing actually drive more change within Unilever? Yes, there's a lot that a company like Unilever can bring in terms of scale, technology, know-how, and weight, particularly with retailers, food safety, whatever it might be. But at the same time, creating that two-way street, that dialogue, so that the smaller businesses or the acquisitions can actually find a way to drive change within Unilever. It's not rocket science, but that's a huge important part of what I'm doing all the time. So I think there's a quick video that I wanted to show. I don't know if it's coming up, but if we could cue that video that gives you a flavor of what our foods business is all about and some of the things that we're doing just before I get into the lessons learned.
Our food system is broken. Climate change, insecurity, and overexploitation of resources has led to a lack of resilience in food production. Poor livelihoods for farmers, rising levels of obesity, and persistent malnutrition. Agriculture and food are at the heart of many of the world's environmental, social, and economic challenges. To feed the world's growing population, we will need to produce 70% more food than we do today, and do it by 2050. To achieve this, we need a system that is more productive, sustainable, and resilient. In short, we have to rethink how we produce and consume food. And that means connecting people with the true value of what we eat, helping them to understand how their food choices impact the world around them, as well as their own well-being. So it's clear, what we need now is a framework for collective action, bringing together governments, NGOs, the food industry, farmers, suppliers, retailers, as well as consumers. At Unilever, we recognize the role we can play as one of the largest foods companies in the world to influence the way food is produced and consumed. We want to help feed a growing world with healthy food from a healthy planet. We believe that nutritious and delicious food should be available and accessible to all, making the healthier choice the easier choice. In our Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, we have set some ambitious targets to produce nutritious food with less waste and less impact on the environment. We are also working to improve the livelihoods of food producers and improve the nutrition and well-being of our consumers. Our Sustainable Nutrition Commitments Map outlines how we will make this happen by focusing on areas where our brands can make the biggest impact. We're taking a holistic approach, recognizing the interconnectivity of the food system from production to consumption, or as we see it, from farm to fork. It's all part of our mission to make food that tastes good, does good, and doesn't cost the earth.
You know, the beginning part of that film is a bit of a downer, but I think at the end of the day, you got, if you want to be in the foods world, whether it's the business or if you're in food service or whatever part you're in, I mean, the food systems that humans create are the things that drive the single biggest impact in the environment. That's a fact. Right? So the food systems we create have the biggest impact in the world around us. And the journal Science, some of you may have seen, just came out with an article talking about the impact. It's particularly around meat and dairy production. But again, just another piece of data this past week talking about the impact that the food industry has, and that's been followed up with, I think, a resurgence of food waste. And I think food waste is going to keep coming up and coming up. And the conversations that my team and I are having with our major food retailers, this is something I think is actually starting to gain traction, which is going to require a lot of behavior focus for the stuff that we're doing with our business. What I'd love to do now is just shift gears a bit and talk about some specific things. So kind of go from the high-level global Unilever strategy, which is all groovy, but as the team that's responsible for driving our foods business in North America, it's our job to take that global stuff and make it real with the people that we serve in North America. And that's actually where the rubber hits the road. So our CEO, Paul Pullman's out there. He's a very visible character. He goes to Davos and all that stuff, and he's incredibly inspirational to the team and I, and it's our job now in the markets to figure out, okay, now what are we going to do with that to make it real so it goes beyond a great video or whatnot. So the first example I'm going to give is Hellmann's cage-free eggs. The first thing I'd say is this is a journey that we're on with the Hellmann's brand. I mean, Hellmann's is the single biggest mayonnaise brand in the U.S., and around the world, and the category for spoonable dressings is what we call this for mayonnaise products is around $2 billion in the United States. So Americans really love mayonnaise and they eat a lot of it. About 11 years ago, the team set about figuring out what are our jobs to be done over the next 5 to 10 years? What do we want to do with this business? And one of the things that was very clear was, as a business that uses primarily eggs, oil, and vinegar, there's some spices and a little bit of preservatives that go in some mayonnaises, but eggs, oil, and vinegar, particularly eggs, is a big input for this. We really were looking for a way to say, how do we demystify the product and help people understand what's in it? And then through that process, which was much more consumer-focused, really came to terms with the fact that as an agricultural company, we have a huge impact in the entire supply chain upstream. And so one of the things the team decided to do is we're going to make animal welfare part of what we do on this business. And that was at a time, 11, 12 years ago, where big brands, it just wasn't really all that common. Certainly the people that we compete with directly, no one was talking about animal welfare and mayonnaise in any remotely the same sentence. And so the team went about figuring out how do we drive animal welfare into the business and set about going cage-free. And again, I think there's a lot of discussion about animal welfare and cage-free. I'm happy to talk after the break if people want to get into specifics, but I started with this is a journey because I think we are on a way to something bigger, and I don't mean to suggest to anybody here that where we are is the end point or back padding. At the time when the team decided to do this, there was about 2% of the total egg production or egg-laying hens in the United States that would qualify for cage-free. That would feed like basically half of California at that time for like 20 minutes. So the idea is if you want to do something, you really have to put both feet in. And it's so easy. I think but one of the biggest lessons we took away from here is that there always will be these questions. Will consumers care? Will this really matter? Will our suppliers go with us on this one? And how the hell are we going to pay for it? And what I found before that and since that, those 3 or 4 questions are persistent. They are always there. They're never going to go away, nor should they. They've helped us figure out what are we doing, and do we really want to do it, and are we really going to stick with it? Because it's not like an ad campaign. Oh, we tried that didn't go so well. Let's move on. You're talking about changing the entire supply chain for a business. So basically, we worked with our suppliers. And everybody was freaking out about 10 years ago, like, how much is this going to cost? And it takes about 3 to 4 years for a hen house to convert from conventional egg production to cage-free. And so there's a whole series, that's a multi-year process that you've got to commit your organization to in order to do it. Oh yeah, by the way, people kind of freaking out about what's the cost and the investment. And without getting into a lot of specifics, there are instances where you need to be willing to invest not only in piece price or price per ounce or pound, but maybe even working with your suppliers to help invest in the capital, the CapEx required to actually make that transition and then create financial arrangements to bring that about. And while while that is difficult, it can actually help you deepen the relationship, that long-term bond that you've got with your suppliers when you go through these types of things together. And so we made a commitment to make all of our products in the United States cage-free by 2020. We actually achieved that a little early. It was Q1 of last year when all of our products were made with cage-free eggs. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. One of the big thrusts was making it relevant. So taking the stuff that I think we're okay at Unilever, and sometimes better than others, is the brand management. How do we communicate this story to consumers? How do you connect with people to make what you want to do relevant? And I'm happy to say that from a brand equity perspective, not surprisingly, Hellmann's has continued to grow in the marketplace. So we've extended our share leadership in the United States and in Canada. Brand equity is at an all-time high with the business. Again, I say that less to brag. I say it as proof, right? Because a lot of people 10 years ago were like, are people really going to care? And, this is going to be more expensive and all that stuff. And the process also, big learning was not only did it help us bond with our suppliers, but it really created a tremendous recruitment engine for the company. Right? So when young people want to go work where they're going to have an impact, right? We all want to work where we have an impact. This is much more true for millennials and Gen Z and all the stuff that you've certainly read a million times. But when you can do something that's right for consumers, that's right for animal welfare, and grow your business, and attract talent and deepen the relationship you've got with the people on your teams, that's kick-ass. That's pretty good. So we're on a journey with the business, and we've got more to go with Hellmann's. And there's a number of programs we're doing with the business around the world on how we push it even further. And what I'm not going to speak to is the work that we're doing on regenerative agriculture and sustainable soy, which is something we've got a close partnership with the state of Iowa, where most of our soybean oil comes from, which is the oil that we use in our mayonnaise. But I'm happy to talk with folks about that. Next one I want to hit on briefly in the next few minutes we've got together is Sir Kensington's. Does anybody know the Sir Kensington's brand? Yeah, man, I love this brand. I started talking with Mark and Scott about a year and a half ago, and just kind of had a conversation, and it really blossomed into something really special. So Sir Kensington's is now part of Unilever, and I'm not sure who actually bought who. It's probably easy to say we bought Sir Kensington's, but if you get your head around it right, as I was talking earlier, if you can position it more that Sir Kensington's bought Unilever. That's an idea that we like to kick around. And the entrepreneurialism. I mean, there's a lot of new businesses that are being started in the food industry that are about cool new trends, exciting new technology, incredible new discoveries in wellness. And these guys went out and created a condiments company. Right? And so I think at the end of the day, the most fundamental lesson of Sir Kensington's that I've taken away so far in the past year or so is that you can bring awesomeness to anything. You can bring greatness to anything that you want to do. And I love their slogan around bringing kind of dignity and charm to overlooked foods. And so one of the things I want to talk about with Sir Kensington is they got a tremendously robust innovation program. And it's going almost 24/7. That their team is really remarkable at the pace with which and the intensity that they drive innovation. One of them was around Aquafaba and the use of Aquafaba to make vegan mayonnaise. And a lot of vegan mayonnaises, up until Sir Kensington's invented this product, were made with all kinds of fillers and binders and stuff like that. To when you take the eggs out, there's a lot of trickiness. So if there's any vegans in the room, you know that taking eggs out and replacing them when you bake a cake or whatnot, it gets a little tricky. And Aquafaba, which is the water from cooking chickpeas, has some really great properties, and it actually mimics some of the properties of eggs in a great way. And actually, one of Sir Kensington's summer interns came up with the idea. So she said, how about we try this, Aquafaba? I'm a vegan, and I know this is really popular with vegan chefs. And so they basically created a product based on the intern. And the product is now called Fabanaise. It's an incredibly delicious, it's in the refrigerated section of many, many retailers. Whole Foods, Sprouts, and now growing across the U.S. Since we've partnered up. But again, this is an idea that the idea is pretty simple. Is that even when you're driving your business as a founder and you're believing that all the energy is coming from your nucleus, from your part of the business, creating that space in all sizes of business, whether you're big like Unilever or you're smaller like Sir Kensington's, is a critical part of inviting innovation into the business. And in their first year, they basically prevented 30,000 pounds of Aquafaba from going down the drain. So this idea that Aquafaba was being thrown out because the hummus industry was taking off like crazy. They're boiling a lot of chickpeas, and that stuff was just going down the drain. So again, a sustainability message about how you can drive the end-to-end. And the last one I want to touch on is a program that we call Growing Roots. In 2016, my team created an urban farming program with the city of New York, the mayor's office, that's all about investing and driving urban farming. We not only help build the farms there and invest in them, and now we've gone from 1 to 6, but we also send our chefs down to basically cook and provide cooking and nutrition classes for people in the community. And that program actually has had a lot of positive benefits, and we're continuing to invest and grow in it. But one of the things that we did at the end of last year is we basically started to unveil a brand that we've created also called Growing Roots. And it's a line of organic snacks. It's the first time we've ever entered the organic snack business in the United States. We've started selling these products here. And the idea is quite simple. There's a very explicit invitation on the pack. Hey, thanks for buying this because we're donating 50%, not 1% or 2%, but 50% of the profits of this new snack brand directly back to urban farming. So putting that invitation directly out there to the consumers that we serve, and then using some of the Unilever muscle to hopefully get this off the ground. So this idea flips the model a bit. So we're generally in commerce and business that is supercharged by purpose. That's largely what we're trying to do. This program of Growing Roots really flips that model on its head. It started as an urban farming program that hopefully, if we do our jobs right, we will supercharge it by bringing commerce to it. And so I think that using both of those models is something my team and I spent a lot of time talking about. What are we bringing to what here? Are we bringing the commerce to the purpose or the purpose to the commerce, and finding a way to drive both? So with that, I'm going to wrap up. My time is up, and maybe a little Q&A, but thank you very much. Hi.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
We'll take a couple quick questions that came in. So I just want to touch upon, you mentioned Growing Roots, which is a great brand you guys created in-house. You touched upon Sir Kensington's, which was an acquisition. When you guys are thinking about trying to solve some of these challenges, whether it's sustainability or even just entering a new category, how do you decide whether it's something you want to innovate in-house or acquire another brand?
It's a great question. I think first and foremost, do we have a foothold in the supply chain around it? So if we're already having a huge impact on X, usually someone's raised their hand already and says, hey, we need to do something about this. This is not cool. Or there's a new technology coming down. So every month I sit down with our entire cross-functional team. So everybody's there from supply chain and nutrition, R&D, and basically, it's kind of a monthly free-for-all where new ideas will come up. So if we are already in that business or that ingredient, we probably have a program against it. More often than not, we are finding that some of the more forward-leading things, such as plastics, is we need help. Right? There's a lot of technology we have at Unilever. We use a lot of plastics, and there's a lot of things we have done, but we want to more increasingly going forward invite people in to help us through strategic partnerships. So if it's something that we do and we do well, we own that. If it's something where we see it emerging coming up, we're probably going to look outside to get somebody to educate us, to coach us, if not bring us some technology where we can collaborate to put some scale to it.
And given this, these ambitious sustainability goals you have for the company, when you do look outside, how important is it that they are a sustainable business as well?
You mean the businesses we might partner with in the future?
Exactly.
Well, what I'd say is if you look at all the businesses that Unilever has acquired here and around the world, most of them have some type of a sustainability message, a purpose orientation. And you don't need to look any further than, say Sundial or the Shea Moisture business or Seventh Generation or even Sir Kensington's. I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but what I would say is it's not rocket science that we're looking for people and businesses and business models that not only drive growth, because I don't care how green what you're doing is, if you're declining, you're not helping anybody. So growth is essential here. And the idea behind the Unilever Sustainable Living program is to decouple that ongoing growth from environmental footprint. So finding businesses and founders and business models where they understand this and understand that we can grow and not only have less negative impact, but positive impact as well. That's something that that's an important factor.
Well, I know there's lots more questions, but unfortunately, we have to wrap this up. We're excited to see how the Sustainable Living program continues to grow in the future and check back in with you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so
I really
much.
appreciate you having me.